honor and pleasure to introduce our own very Dr. Klar Yaggi today. Dr. Yaggi is a professor of medicine in the section of pulmonary critical care and sleep medicine clinician scientist at the Yale School of Medicine. He's also the director of the Yale Centers for Sleep Medicine, vice chair of research for pulmonary critical care and sleep medicine, and director of the Yale Translational Sleep, Circadian, and Respiratory Neurobiology Research Center. He completed his undergrad studies at Johns Hopkins University, earned his medical degree from the University of Maryland School of Medicine, and then moved to Yale, where he completed his internal medicine residency, pulmonary critical care, and sleep medicine fellowship, along with the Masters of Public Health and Chronic Disease Epidemiology from the Yale School of Epidemiology and Public Health, and has been here. His research has focused on the cardiovascular, neurologic, and metabolic consequences of sleep disorders, including sleep apnea, sleep deficiency, circadian disruption, opioid use disorder, and critical illness, and has resulted in more than 200 publications. It did take me a while to go through your CV, Klar, including the landmark work published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2004, which helped establish obstructive sleep apnea as an independent risk factor for ischemic stroke. And in 2020, this was the fourth most cited paper on sleep apnea. He's also received numerous awards, is a recipient of several grants, including from the NIH, and he's served as PI or co-PI on numerous NIH, VA, and internationally funded multi-center clinical trials. Currently, he leads an NIH R1 clinical trial evaluating SGLT2 inhibitors as a potential pharmacologic therapy for sleep apnea, along with the Wellcome Trust from UK-supported study examining how rising ambient temperature influences mental health through sleep and activity pathways, which we are fortunately going to hear more about today. Dr. Yaggi is a nationally and internationally recognized educator and speaker with extensive leadership roles in the ATS, CHEST, and the sleep research community. He's a multiple-time recipient of the Distinguished CHEST Educator Award and has received numerous honors and awards for his research, mentorship, and contributions to the field of sleep medicine, and has also been an active advocate for sleep health through the Sleep Advocacy Forum and Sleep Hill Day. Most importantly, he's also a very generous mentor and colleague. Thank you so much for being with us, Klar, and without further delay, I would like to hand it over to you to share your expertise on this very interesting topic, sleepless in a warming world, the impact of rising temperatures on sleep and health.
Wow, thank you so much, Shri. That was a wonderful introduction, and thank you so much for doing such a great job of organizing this conference and moderating this every week. It is my pleasure to be here and share with you some work that we're doing in this space. This is not a topic that I think as sleep specialists we're used to focusing on, but I sense it's going to become increasingly relevant over time. I have no relevant financial relationships with ineligible companies to disclose for this particular talk, and below is the number for CME credit. I think this will be put into the chat. I do have, I think as Shri alluded to, a newly funded grant that I will be talking about today, at least in terms of the study design that was funded through the Wellcome Trust, entitled the Heat Mind Study, that is looking at sleep as a mechanism for adverse health outcomes with higher ambient temperatures. But as this is our first sleep seminar in the new year, and my family background is from Switzerland. Klar Yaggi is a Swiss name. I thought I would share with you some of the unusual New Year's traditions that happen in Switzerland, particularly in the Alpine region, before we get started with the talk. So, in true Swiss fashion, we're very tidy people, apparently. One of the traditions is to clean your house before New Year's Eve. And the thought here is that by doing so, you're leaving your old troubles behind in the new year. We dine on New Year's Eve with fondue or raclette, which is basically a plate of Swiss cheese. We go around house to house in our neighborhoods in a group called a Schupel, singing a slow yodel of good luck wishes. And when we go to each house, we're given mulled wine. And finally, on New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, we don what is called Sylvester Clausen dress, which is fabricated out of old Christmas trees, combined with an ornate headdress and a very large cowbell. And this is what this looks like when you go around your neighborhood and honor this tradition. And I bring this up not because of the time of year, but because I've always thought of this unusual tradition, and this dress, though made out of old Christmas trees, is preserved and handed down from generation to generation. It really, I think, is a nice example of sort of circular use of natural materials, this sort of intergenerational, passed on from one generation to the next, of ecologic memory. It really is an alpine tradition. Our family is from Grindelwald, which sits right at the base of the Eiger. Represents a kinship with humans in the natural world, very low impact, and I think tries to model living in balance with nature. And we certainly need, I think, more examples of that, given the current climate crisis that we're in. And so for today's talk, what we're going to do is spend some time just looking at some of the evidence of climate change and some of the trajectories that are projected related to climate change. We're going to talk about some of the evidence related to the impact of hotter weather and heat waves in particular on well-being, health, and behavior. We're going to talk about the evidence that we have about the impact of rising temperatures on sleep and thermoregulation in sleep, and then finish off by sharing with you what we're planning to study with this recently funded grant, and how we're going about trying to ask and answer questions that will sort of inform this space. So human influence has warmed the climate at a rate that is unprecedented over the last 2,000 years since we have data. And to the left, panel A shows that there have been significant changes in global surface temperatures over the past 2,000 years. And some of that data is reconstructed from paleoclimate archives, some the more recent data from direct observations. And there has been a 1.1 to almost 1.5 degree increase in global surface temperatures. And much of that has occurred over the last 100 to 150 years. And this is data from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And the concern about this is really what is predicted to occur if changes in largely greenhouse gas emissions are not curtailed. And what this figure shows are two basic scenarios with different patterns of change regarding the impact that global warming, what the degree of global warming that will occur over the course of this century to 2100. And in the first example, in light blue, moderating temperature increase to 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius. This really involves strong climate policies and in a cooperative world that actively avoids dangerous climate change. But if such policies are not implemented, and countries as the United States is currently doing, focus inward, and climate policy coordination begins to break down. What has a lot of climate scientists concerned is that by the end of this century, we could see a 4 to 5 degree Celsius increase in global surface temperatures, which is truly unprecedented. And Largely what is driving this increase in global surface temperatures are greenhouse gases. And these are gases like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide that get into the biosphere and trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere. Um, and these greenhouse gases are primarily generated from burning fossil fuels, I think, as we're all aware, for energy, for transportation, industry. And to limit the temperature, the global surface temperature increase to 1.5 or even 2 degrees Celsius over the course of this next century really involves rapid, deep, and immediate curtailment and limiting of greenhouse gas reductions. And what this figure shows on the right-hand side of the slide is the degree to which those greenhouse gases need to be limited and where we are currently if our implemented policies continue over the course of this century. And so what has been put forth by climate scientists is we're really at a fork in the road right now with two trajectories of Earth system stewardship. And so we are currently in the Holocene epoch and have been here for the last 12,000 years. This is officially recognized as our current geological epoch, but there is a big push to change the name of this epoch to the Anthropocene epoch, to really acknowledge the degree to which human activity has become the dominant force in our climate, and largely through mass energy. There's some debate over whether this Anthropocene epoch began with the Industrial Revolution. There's also the 1940s and 1950s, when there was a huge acceleration in mass energy use around the world, has also been suggested as the beginning of the Anthropocene. But where we are right now is if we embrace sort of this our Earth system stewardship and start to limit greenhouse gas emissions, and this will ultimately we will still see some warming, but lead to a stabilized planet. If our human emissions continue unabated at their current rate, anticipated our biosphere degradation, crossing a threshold where intrinsic feedback loops in the planet start occurring, and what has been termed the hothouse Earth could result. And the issue with global temperature warming, I think, as we're all very familiar, is that they cause significantly more extreme weather events. So more rain, heavy and intense rainfall and snowfall, increasing the flood risk. There are higher rates of atmospheric rivers, which is where our atmosphere holds more moisture. These also are predicted to be longer, wider, wetter, and increase the risk for flood risk and damage. Droughts become drier and longer. Storms like hurricanes and tornadoes have greater energy. Importantly, heat waves are becoming more frequent, hotter, and last longer, and wildfires are also occurring with increasing frequency. But we're really going to, for the purpose of this talk, focus on the literature and the impact of heat waves, and in particular. There's a lot of science around the health outcomes of these waves. And I think they have particular relevance to the circadian thermoregulation that occurs with sleep. And what we know is and anticipate is that even within our lifetime, for folks who were born in the 1960s, compared to children born in this decade, uh, based on various climate and global temperature scenarios, there will be dramatic differences in the lifetime exposure to heat waves. So compared to an individual born in the 1960s, like myself, the birth cohort in 2020 will see anywhere from 4 to 7-fold increased exposure in heat waves just over the course of their life expectancy. We also know that nighttime temperature, so nights are warming, and the frequency of warmer nights are rising faster than the daytimes. And this is data from a cohort called the HAD-X2 data set that revealed that since around the 1970s, the frequency of warmer nights has increased more consistently and across a larger geographic area than the frequency of warmer days. And in large part, this is because the Earth is losing its ability to cool down at night. And so why are warmer nights rising faster than warmer days? So daytime temperature is increasing in large part by incoming solar energy, but cloud cover and aerosols sort of reflect that sunlight and sort of limits daytime heating. In contrast, largely due to greenhouse gas trapping the infrared heat and clouds that reduce that heat loss, nighttime temperatures are increasing at a faster rate. And this is being amplified by greenhouse gases serving as sort of a thermal blanket at nighttime, higher rates of water vapor and humidity that reduce radiative cooling on the planet, more moisture in the air, more cloud cover that also predisposes to nighttime warming. And importantly, and what is becoming a larger driver of this is urban heat storage and a construct called urban heat islands. At the present time, about little over half of the global population reside in cities. And by the year 2050, 2/3 of the global population will reside in cities. And the heat island effect is due to the fact that urban surfaces store more sensible heat than rural surfaces. And this heat is often released during what is considered to be the normal human resting period at nighttime. Local waste heat is also greater in downtown urban areas related to being generated by buildings, by traffic exhaust, by machinery, and by people. And in particular, during heat waves, this urban nocturnal heat stress becomes more pronounced. And so what do we know about the impact of these heat waves and hotter weather in general on well-being, on health, and on behavior? There's been a fair amount of data, largely large epidemiologic studies that have indicated that high ambient temperatures adversely impact learning. They decrease labor productivity. They lead to more frequent are associated with more frequent rates of injuries. And there are a cadre of health effects. We're all, I think, many of us very familiar with heat-related illnesses like heat stroke, dehydration, but cardiovascular events, respiratory complications, particularly among our patients with underlying pulmonary disease and infectious vector-borne diseases, all increase with rising temperatures, as does mortality in general. Interestingly, sentiment and getting more into the domain of mental health also deteriorates with hotter weather and warmer climates. And I want to just pause here for a second and share with you this study. So this is typical of some of the large epidemiologic work that is done in climate science. And this particular group of investigators went into the Twitter sphere and geolocalized tweets from 2015 to 2021. So over 8 billion tweets across 190 countries and 13 languages, and linked temperature with sentiment based on natural language processing of these social media posts. And what they observed is that warmer temperature was associated with higher negative sentiment and corresponding lower positive sentiment. So in addition to these health effects and sentiment effects, we know from other studies there is worse mental health, so higher rates of depression, anxiety, conflict, and even suicide rates. And so one of the questions is, what is going on? How does this happen? What are some of the mechanisms between higher ambient temperatures that we're already seeing and adverse health outcomes? And really the point of this talk and the focus of this talk is some of this perhaps related to sleep deficiency. And we know that sleep deficiency is associated with these same adverse health outcomes. So sleep deficiency has been linked to learning and memory impairment, decreases in labor productivity, increases in injury and accidents, a cadre of cardiovascular health and metabolic health outcomes. It's been linked to lower sentiment, worse mental health aggression, and even higher suicide rates. And so sleep loss and sleep deficiency sort of mirrors some of these adverse effects on heat and health. And I think one of the questions that our research group has become quite interested in is whether it may in fact be mediating some of these health outcomes. And so we're going to shift now and talk a little bit about what we know from the climate research about rising temperatures and their impact on sleep. And I think we're all very familiar with the fact that core body temperature follows a very robust circadian rhythmicity. It is, in fact, one of the ways that we can monitor the clock and circadian rhythmicity. Core body temperature reaches its lowest point here in the early morning hours, which represents our maximal sleep propensity. And temperature then begins to rise even before awakening, and that rising temperature, in fact, helps to promote wakefulness. That is then followed by a steep rise, a slight afternoon plateau, which we are all in at the moment, an evening peak, and then subsequent decline. And this sort of nighttime descent in core body temperature is what allows sleep initiation and helps to maintain sleep during the night. And so this circadian thermoregulation really plays a functional role in both falling and staying asleep. This is not a passive result of just going to sleep and our body temperature drop. This is the circadian system regulating using temperature to help the body and the brain and help open up the gates of sleep. So before sleep onset, what we know, as it can be seen on the thermal image on the right, the body actually redistributes heat from the core of the body to the periphery and to cool the core down, to facilitate the onset of sleep. And stable sleep really does depend on maintaining a reduced thermal load during the sleeping period. So in non-REM sleep, thermoregulatory control is preserved, though somewhat diminished. And what we know is that increases in ambient temperature or skin temperature results in increases in arousals and increased fragmentation of sleep during the night. Interestingly, in REM sleep, thermoregulatory control, so this shifting and redistribution of heat to different parts of the body, is completely suspended. In fact, there's no sweating that occurs during REM sleep and no shivering that occurs during REM sleep. And increases in temperature can, in fact, selectively suppress REM sleep. And so one question is, does nighttime ambient temperature, like those increases that we're already observing globally, impact individual level sleep outcomes around the world? And I wanted to share with you this publication. This is work by Kelton Miner, who is in our research group on this Wellcome Trust study. And he took an enormous amount of work where he took just under 50,000 adults and had access to wearables and Fitbit wristbands, sleep tracking devices of those individuals, linked this with daily weather and climate data around the world, was able to control for some very basic demographic individual level factors and geographic factors, geographic seasonality, and some day of study time trends and weather to estimate the causal effect of nighttime temperature on sleep duration and timing as measured by these wearable sleep trackers, and even made some projections about sleep loss in various warming scenarios. And what he observed in this work is that rising temperatures really do erode human sleep globally. It advances sleep offset. It delays a sleep onset. It shortens overall sleep duration and significantly increases the probability of short sleep, regardless of whether we define this as less than 5 hours, less than 6 hours, or less than 7 hours of sleep. He projected that with various climate change scenarios, the impact of sleep loss over the century, and estimated just based on weather station data, 20 more short sleep nights that would be associated with warmer temperatures, and a significant number of a significant reduction in hours of sleep across the year annually among participants in current and future warmer conditions. These effects that were observed in sleep and projected effects of sleep were heterogeneous. And in fact, we know that these effects were worse among older adults compared to middle-aged and younger adults, or worse among women. They were worse in lower income countries, as you might expect, with access to air conditioning and ways to abate heat, and significantly worse as would be expected during the summer seasonality and summer months. There's been a systematic review of some of the epidemiologic studies, and there have been I think about 50 of these studies were included in the systematic review of ambient heat on sleep in a warming climate. And consistently, these studies have showed that rising temperatures degrade sleep, delay sleep onset, increase sleep fragmentation, reduce total sleep time and duration. Nighttime heat exposure appears to be the dominant driver in terms of its impact on sleep. This sleep loss rapidly accelerates during heat waves and hot summers, and again appears to disproportionately affect more vulnerable populations, older adults, lower income groups, and residents of countries in warmer regions. And importantly, in some of these studies showed that currently in these countries, there was little evidence that sleep got better over time during these heat waves. So little evidence to date that we acclimatize to these hotter temperatures in terms of its impact on our sleep. And so the question that we have become interested in is really, could sleep deficiency be a possible mechanistic link between warmer temperatures and some of the adverse health outcomes that have been reported? And when we recently reviewed some of this literature, vast majority of the climate health science has been largely large-scale epidemiologic studies. So, and this is really limited at the individual level, our understanding how heat affects specific health outcomes. Many of these studies have used different temperature metrics and largely relied on data from outdoor temperatures estimated from local weather stations across the globe. And there's really a scarcity of data sets currently out there integrating temperature exposure, health and mental health outcomes, biomarkers that really help to get more at the mechanistic and etiologic investigation of the connection between heat and health and mental health in particular. And importantly, a scarcity of mechanistic clinical trials really to help us better translate climate health science to identify potential interventions that may help to improve these health outcomes. And what I'd like to do for the remainder of the talk is really share with you the approach that we're taking to better understand some of these mechanisms, particularly around rising temperatures, sleep, and mental health. And we got interested in this is one of my collaborators, Josh Warchel, who is a young adult and adolescent child psychologist, had this very interesting data regarding the summer heat effects on suicide risk. And what he observed in this data is that the group at highest risk for suicide were young adults, almost a threefold higher risk of suicide compared to other age group populations. And for every 1 degree Celsius increase above average monthly temperature levels, it was observed in this data set, a 3% increase in suicide rates. And what we observed also is a potential mediating effect related to insomnia. And it was this insomnia interaction with temperature that really helped to explain some of this age stratified data in this particular age group. And so that led us to try to better understand this critical relationship. And we proposed a study called the Heat Mind study, which is an acronym for heat exposure and effective trajectories, looking at mediators of insomnia, neurocognition, and daily activity. And in particular, what we are interested in learning from this study are the mechanisms that might drive this sort of heat mental health relationship. Is this mediated perhaps through sleep impairment? Is this mediated through differences and changes in cognition? Is this mediated perhaps in part through decreases in physical activity? We are also interested in whether daytime heat exposure versus nighttime heat exposure affects mental health differently, and any moderating sort of vulnerability factors. And the overall aims of this study, our first aim is really mechanistic and to look at mediation analyses to determine whether sleep, cognitive function, and physical activity may in part mediate the relationship between this known relationship between temperature and mood. As I said, we have an aim focused on the timing of heat exposure, so daytime versus nocturnal warming temperatures, moderating risk factors, and there's a qualitative analysis as part of this. One of the moderating factors that we're particularly interested in as it relates to this population is medications. And in fact, SSRIs in particular have a known to cause a heat intolerance and with higher rates of hospitalizations for heat-related injuries, and is believed in part to be a function of the serotonin's impact in the hypothalamus and hypothalamic temperature regulation and the ability to sweat and have the body cool itself. So this larger study really has two basic sub-studies, two components. So the first is going to be in young adults, a large cohort study across the United States, which I'll describe in just a moment. And then more locally in Connecticut, in collaboration with Hartford Healthcare and our biobehavioral research laboratory here at Yale, we are going to do a mechanistic clinical trial where we actually adjust temperatures during nighttime and daytime to look at the impact that directly has on sleep architecture. So this first study, we will be recruiting 1,000 young adults who have a history of depression or anxiety across the United States, who will be monitored remotely using Fitbit, temperature monitors, their cell phones. They'll have an external temperature monitor in addition to the Fitbit. And over the course of the day, we're going to be doing several ecological momentary assessments, actually 3 to 4 times a day, which will give us an assessment of their psychological reserve, anxiety, depression, correlated with body temperature, ambient temperature, activity, etc. And there will also be a qualitative assessment that occurs with this part of the study. Some of the assessments that we will be doing via the cell phone in this population involve probing some of the pathways that we're interested in. So looking at measures of cognition, sleep diary, will have objective rest activity patterns from their Fitbit. We'll be probing mood with depression and anxiety scales. And in the morning, during midday, and the evening. And these are very quick EMA assessments that come up as text messages on their cell phones throughout the day that they participate in. The second part of the study is really, which I'm largely overseeing, is a smaller mechanistic clinical trial. It's going to be a randomized controlled crossover trial of 50 young adults who have depression and anxiety, who will come down to Yale and over the summer months spend 2 weekends in our sleep lab with some additional home monitoring over 4 weeks. They will be randomized to two experimental conditions with temperatures, higher temperatures in the daytime and normal temperatures, thermoneutral temperatures at nighttime versus lower thermoneutral temperatures during the daytime and higher temperatures at nighttime. We'll be doing polysomnography, full 18-channel polysomnography on these patients, spot EEG, which will give us a measure of hypofrontality. They will also be wearing Fitbits. They will also be responding to ecological momentary assessments and will undergo a qualitative interview at the end of the study. These are some of the monitors. We'll be measuring both core body temperature and peripheral temperature, have a measure of ambient temperature within the room, their Fitbit devices, and EEG. And this is the basic design of this crossover trial. It involves 2 weekends over the summer. They're reimbursed for their time and participation in the study and intervening home monitoring, total 4 weeks. And the same patient will be randomized first to daytime higher temperatures and normal nighttime temperatures, then nighttime higher temperatures and daytime. So each individual patient serves as their own control in this study. And one of the hypotheses that we are particularly interested in this study is some of the emotional regulation that occurs after midnight, in the middle of the night, when patients would potentially be awoken due to higher temperatures. And these are some of the EMA assessments that we'll be doing in this randomized control crossover. Again, emulating some of the larger cohort studies, probing cognition, physical activity, emotional regulation, and sleep. And one of the hypotheses that we're particularly interested in and probing during the sleep laboratory study is a circadian hypothesis that has been termed by Beth Klarman the mind after midnight hypothesis. And that hypothesis goes like this, is that we really weren't designed to be or evolved to be awake during our biological circadian night. And there is evidence that wakefulness during our biologic night, some of the regions that control executive function shut down during this time. There is impaired emotional regulation. Negative thoughts are much more powerful. I think we've all experienced waking up in the middle of the night thinking doom and gloom, and then the sun rises, and we're like, why were we thinking like that? There are increases in impulsivity during this time, and which are accompanied by behavioral dysregulation. So self-harm, violent crime, substance use, dietary choices, and cravings all tend to occur during the middle of the night and early morning hours. And one, I think, very powerful example of this from an epidemiologic data perspective, relevant to this study, is an analysis that was done by Michael Perlis and Michael Grandner, looking at the prevalence and risk rates of suicide across a 24-hour period. And so what this figure shows is that as expected. Most suicides in terms of total numbers peak around noon. And this corresponds as represented by these gray histogram bars. And this actually corresponds to the greatest level of population wakefulness, being awake at noon during the daytime. One of the interesting things that they did in this analysis and trying to gain insight into this mind after midnight hypothesis is adjust for population wakefulness. So suicide requires wakefulness. It is a volitional activity. And if you actually adjust for the rates of wakefulness at various times of days, what they found is that the rates of suicide, the risk for suicide is actually about fourfold higher than baseline in terms of actual numbers, sort of getting back at this behavioral dysregulation, emotional dysregulation that may occur during biologic night when we're awake. And we think this may be playing a role in some of the epidemiologic data that led to this study. So to finish up, we've talked about how climate change is already here. Warming nights appear to be one of the most biologically disruptive features. Sleep depends on circadian thermoregulation and nocturnal cooling, and warmer nights directly impact this fundamental process. Rising temperatures we already have very robust evidence that the current temperatures are shortening human sleep globally. And it's really this nighttime heat, not daytime heat, that appears to be the dominant driver in terms of sleep disruption. Not necessarily every health outcome, but particularly relative to sleep disruption. We talked about how the higher rates of urbanization, 2/3 of the global population by 2050 will be living in cities, how urbanization is amplifying nocturnal heat stress in the context of these heat islands that correspond to the human rest period. We talked about how sleep loss mirrors and may mediate some of the same adverse effects of heat on health and behavior and society. We talked about how the burden of heat-related sleep loss is unequal, significantly higher among older adults, higher rates of sleep loss among women, individuals from hotter regions, and particularly prevalent during summer months. Finally, we talked about how that we have very strong, I think, epidemiologic data. There's a real lack in this space, in the climate health space, for mechanistic and individual level data that could inform future interventions. And we finished off by talking about this study that we're just starting right now that will hopefully help to address a translational gap by testing sleep as a mechanistic bridge between heat and mental health and mental health outcomes. This is the investigative team for the Heat Mind study. Josh Wurtzel, who's a co-PI on this study, is a child and young adult psychiatrist. Michelle Bell here at Yale is a climate scientist. I'm the sleep specialist on the study. One of the things that was part of this grant was bringing in patients with lived expertise to help inform some of the questions at the beginning of the grant and help inform the study over the course. For the first part of this study, this larger cohort study across the country, we brought in NORC, which is a a survey company that is affiliated with the University of Chicago to assist with recruitment and the surveys, and have expertise in using large amounts of actigraphy and EMA data, and a heat physiologist on the study. And with that, I will stop, and hopefully we have a few minutes for some questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wow, Dr. Yaggi, thank you so much for this amazing talk on this such an important and much needed topic in this day and age. And thank you so much again for taking this initiative, to work on this topic that I think is so important for this entire mankind now. A small question, and I'm not sure if it's too early to ask on, but since rising temperature is, an unavoidable reality, what practical steps can clinicians, researchers, and health systems now take to protect sleep health, especially in this young adult population, and also in particular, any, practical interventions from your early on research on this topic, which may be, behavioral, environmental, or pharmacologic, that holds the greatest promise for protecting overall sleep health in this warming world?
Yeah, that's a great question, Shri. And I think that's exactly why we need more data in the space, and particularly a better understanding of the pathways and mechanisms which are mediating the effects of temperature on sleep, on mental health. But there are ways to address this. I mean, what I think we need to focus on globally, obviously, is reducing emissions and getting this massive temperature rise that is anticipated over the next century under control, and technologies to support that. But at the individual level, which I think is what you're asking, is a lot of this depends on when these effects are occurring during sleep. Certainly, interventions like air conditioning and cooling blankets, but I think just simply also an awareness of, and until I started sort of looking into this space, I'm of course very familiar with the circadian thermoregulation, but did not really fully appreciate how much temperature impacts sleep architecture. And so particularly cooling at nighttime in that sort of thermal neutral zone, I think is going to be important. And I think some of this explains the heterogeneous effects that we're seeing in warmer temperatures and lower socioeconomic. But there are interventions out there. There are cooling interventions out there. But I think it's awareness, providing the evidence to garner the resources to get those resources.
Thank you. There are many questions, so I'll try to tackle all of them. From Dr. Adam Sorcher, is there any theory about why women experience greater sleep loss compared to men in higher temperatures?
We don't understand that. I think we could ask the same question among older adults as well. We obviously have sex differences in a number of different domains related to sleep physiology. What we do know, just extrapolating from the field of sleep disorder breathing and some of the endotyping work that we've done, Andres and Chuck in our group has focused on in particular, is that on average, and Christine Wan has contributed to this importantly as well, have lower arousal thresholds than men, and are, in other words, are more easily woken up. And so that may explain some of the greater sleep disruption associated with riser temperature. But I think we need more data to really inform those sex differences.
Thank you. Brian, you have a question? Go on.
I do. So this seems somewhat inevitable, and in the world. So I guess this is a what does all mean it all mean question. But our energy requirements are only going up. Especially with AI data centers and all this are going up. So how do we? What are solutions to this on a worldwide basis? Do we fund more clean energy? Are there ways to reduce our energy use? Like, how do we fix it?
No, I agree with you. I think that it just seems like this massive problem. But I think, and I am not a climate scientist, as you well know, Brian,
Mhm.
but I think that I think that shifting to a real commitment to shifting to renewable energy sources away from fossil fuels and decreasing greenhouse gases is the main strategy. It's just we don't have currently a government that is embracing that, and I think it could be catastrophic if we don't coordinate across the globe, and we've got to stop sticking our head in the sand and embrace some of these solutions. But you're right. I don't see energy requirements decreasing. I think particularly with AI and the amount of energy that is, there's only increasing. But we have got to take this seriously, and we're at the very beginning. We have opportunities to make differences, but we need the political will to do that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Completely agree. Next question from Gina Mason. Thank you for your talk, Dr. Yaggi. Do you know if there is any data on whether self-reported chronotype may moderate the impact of heat stress on sleep loss and its corresponding mental health effects?
That is a great question. I do not know, but you would certainly anticipate that it may, right? Because it is our circadian rhythm that is inducing the thermoregulation that is allowing sleep onset and sleep offset to occur. And so you could imagine a severely delayed sleep phenotype that into the daytime or shift workers may not be as susceptible. But I don't know off the top of my head any study that has been able to assess that. I think there may be data out there, at least applying cosine analysis to some of the rest activity data from some of these Fitbit devices could potentially shed some light on it. That's a really great question.
Thank you. Next question from T. Kumar. That was mind-blowing. Thank you, Dr. Yaggi. Is there anything as physician, scientist, or a human being that brings you hope in all this?
I think I must say I was a bit naive about this space before really jumping into this literature, and we are the most resourceful creatures on the planet. And I think there are people out there who are working really hard. And I think there's, some hope that there will be some technological solutions, but I think each of us needs to really do our part and take this seriously. I'm a little pessimistic right now, I must say, but it's not a fait accompli, and I think we have an opportunity. We got to get the word out, educate, and I never thought we would be talking about this and the impact of this in sleep science, and here we are. And I think getting these data in the right hands and designing interventions to sort of mediate the health impacts is one of the ways that I think our field can mitigate some of what's happening.
Thanks, Klar. Next question is from Steve Baldessari. Klar, thanks for a great talk. What's the optimal ambient environmental temperature to promote high quality sleep, and does the optimal temperature change throughout the night?
It's just sort of what's called a sort of thermoneutral zone. And I'm horrible at translating Celsius to Fahrenheit, but it's usually around the mid to high 60s is the thermoneutral zone. And that's the control condition that we're using in this crossover trial. And we'll be going up to 90 degrees compared to nighttime heat in this study, but cool temperatures at nighttime, mid to high 60s, what appears to be optimal for sleep.
It's 3 p.m., so for anyone who needs to leave, please feel free, but whoever can stick around, there are more questions, if that's okay with you, Klar.
Of course.
From William Rodriguez, how patterns of sleep from those of the tropics are interesting. How patterns of sleep from those of the tropics are different somehow from those in the cooler areas. How do you account for race and socioeconomic data?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in some of these very large epidemiologic studies that I think one of which I shared from tweets and the other from large database, Fitbit databases and wearable databases and so forth, they had data on geographic location, had data on temperature, had data on at least country socioeconomic status, and so those clearly suggested heterogeneous effects. So higher rates in lower income countries, higher rates in the meta-analysis in warmer countries, and I mentioned some of the sex differences and age differences.
Thank you. Next question is from Joyce Leonetti. Amazing talk, Dr. Yaggi. She's in Arizona, so happy to be a cohort with extreme heat temperatures in your studies. And definitely we see increase in sleep dysfunction during summer months with temperature as high as 120. It's a comment. Let's continue to thwart global warming.
You're here.
And then next there's policy solution that require health professional engagement. So if people are interested, you could click that link from Har Chakuri.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and then the next certificate launches in February and focused on subnational public and environmental health policy, held mostly virtual, 2 days in person in DC, alongside with annual Med Society Consortium's annual conference. So if anyone is interested, there's the link as well. And looks like they do cover a lot on energy.
Oh, wow. And that's designed that's health policy, health, and providers. So that's a great resource.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing this. There's a link as well. And then there's more comments. Jennifer Crum, fascinating. Thank you. And if anyone has any other questions, last burning questions, please feel free to unmute yourself. We will otherwise end.
Wonderful.
I don't see any other questions. This is excellent. Thank you so much for
Thank
this
you for the
work.
invite.
This
Great
is
work.
amazing. So much best wishes from everyone, all of us who are here. You can do it.
All right. We can do this.
Thanks
We got
again.
this.
Yes, we got this amazing way to start our spring grand rounds. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone, for joining, and see you next week. Bye.